Good morning and welcome to our viewers. Thank you for joining us for another iteration of the Irvine Gateway Experts Open for Business webinar series. This is an initiative developed to introduce foreign direct investors to our Irvine Gateway partners who are ready and willing to answer the most commonly asked questions when considering your expansion to Irvine. Today, we're pleased to welcome J.C. Ruffalo of Octane, who will provide an overview of the role Octane and its partners play in continuing to support and grow the innovation ecosystem in Southern California. Orange County has become nationally recognized for creating high-quality ideas, entrepreneurs, and a lifestyle to build sustainable, growing businesses. JC is an expert in the industry and dedicated to helping foreign direct investors make wise, informed decisions that are critical for your business success. Also on board is Linda Pomeroy, CEO and co-founder of Cambridge Orthopedic Labs Limited, joining us from London. She will give us her insights on the Orange County innovation ecosystem and her LaunchPad experience when she visited here in Irvine. As a reminder, you are able to ask any questions you may have for our experts through the Q&A Zoom feature. Just click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen whenever you have something to submit, and we'll get you an answer by the end of the presentation. With that, JC and Linda, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for being here today. Please introduce yourself and let's get started.
Thank you, Pepper, and wonderful to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So let me do that real quick. And while that hopefully is loading up, I'm going to just give a quick overview on all things Octane, what we do here, how we're able to help businesses, not just nationally, but internationally, and how we work to kind of build this really nice bridge between Europe and Southern California. So hopefully everyone can see my screen. Just going to go through kind of a high-level overview and then turn it over to questions at the end. And then I'll pass it to Linda, or after I can pass it to Linda and we can do questions together. But going through Octane, there's 4 major cornerstones. And a lot of people associate Orange County specifically with Disneyland and the beach or real estate. But really, it's a huge hub for innovation. And there's 4 major components that Octane does. And Octane was formed back in 2002. And it's a nonprofit. It produces about 5 large signature events throughout the year. It does 30 smaller programs. And the way Octane as the nonprofit receives a lot of its support is through large sponsorships, whether it's through a large medical device company like Allergan, Johnson & Johnson, Medtronic, that support us at a high level, or just the revenue that we create through our events, or even small to individual memberships. So Octane has grown throughout the past almost 20 years. We have a huge network of about 30,000 people, but we really call upon about 400 advisors that really trickle into the Octane LaunchPad program. So I'm going to talk quickly about our LaunchPad program. LaunchPad is what I currently run. It's a division inside of Octane. It is also a nonprofit. We do not charge a fee or take equity with any of the companies that we work with. We're here to help them. Their success is our success. So we want to see them raise capital and create new jobs. Those are the metrics that we use to get our grant support from. We receive both federal and state grants to support our initiative. And just to give you a quick insight, our companies that have gone through our program, there's about over 617 or so. They've gone on to raise over $2.4 billion in capital and produced almost 14,000 new high-paying jobs. So the 2 nonprofit sides on the screen on the right are both the Octane Connect as well as the LaunchPad program, which I specifically run, and we'll go into the LaunchPad program in more detail. Now, on the left-hand side, there's our growth services platform as well as our capital. And to talk about growth services, that's a platform for companies that are small to medium-sized businesses. Maybe they've utilized the LaunchPad program, but they're really there to help for back-end office service support. So operational support, HR, accounting, talent search, maybe even capital, if it's helpful to try and make some capital connections. But that trickles down into our capital side. Now, inside of Octane, it's also a general partner in a venture fund. So Octane created a venture fund called Visionary Ventures. It is focused in the medical technology side, really specifically in ophthalmology. So that's anything in the eye care space, as well as medical aesthetics. So plastic surgery, dermatology, cosmetology, as Orange County is very prevalent in both ophthalmology and medical aesthetics. Um, but to jump into really what I do specifically within Octane, and here I want to just mention that the 5 signature events that Octane does is the Medical Aesthetics Technology Summit, and that's in January. We do have our Technology Innovation Forum, so that's anything in high tech, so cybersecurity, fintech, so financial technology, social apps to blockchain, AI, big data. We bring a lot of keynote speakers, and each of these signature events that you can see on my screen attract anywhere from 400 to almost 1,000 people, depending on the conference. But we bring great keynote speakers, whether it's the CEO of Medtronic or CEO of Johnson & Johnson, to come speak at these events, or we even try and get some people in the technology space with the ophthalmology or medical technology. So it's really a well-rounded program in terms of our events that are 2 days typically and attract a good conference where great networking happens. And one of the highlights at each of these conferences are the LaunchPad companies that go up on stage and present to the entire audience their investment deck presentation to help them get further exposure, whether it's a strategic ask for capital or a strategic ask for a synergy within a large strategic. But that's really the highlight of a lot of our conferences. And to jump into our proven Launchpad process, as I had earlier mentioned, we have about 617 companies that have really graduated through our program since 2010. We see about 500 or so companies a year, but we're only really able to help about 10 or 15% of them. Maybe they're at the wrong stage, maybe they're too early, maybe they're in a different industry that we can help, but that's what helps us really distill down an ideal client is a high technology innovation, solving a unique problem with a unique solution. And as you can see here again, since 2010, companies have gone on to raise over 2.4 billion in capital, produced over 1,300 new jobs. And what's really interesting is the cream of a crop that we kind of select from that 617. 82% of those companies receive funding within a year's time frame, and 76 of those companies, even going back to 2010, are still in operation. So we really are a proven process that reduces investment in both late seed round and Series A funding. So how do we really help? This is kind of another, these are some of our companies that have come through our program and the impact that they've made. So 2019, just last year, we had 337 million in capital infusion, over 400 plus companies applied. We met with about half of them. We took about 58 to panel. Again, that brought our number to 2.4 billion and 13,000 new jobs. And we're really excited about our alumni network and the impact that they're making. So here was the slide I was trying to mention earlier. How do we work? So it typically takes about 12 to 16 weeks to go through our program. We don't do a cohort. It's not like a class where we bring in 12 companies at a time and it's every day. We're very much more ad hoc. So a company could be in week 1 with us, while the next company we meet with later in that afternoon could be in week 16. And companies will apply to us. And again, we have to kind of filter them through. As we do receive, we're small staff. We do try and tailor it to the companies that we can feel we can have an impact on. So about half of them, we refer to other resources. We bring in about the 200 or so initially to have them present their investor deck to us. And that's really the key thing that we're able to help. Our value proposition back to a company that's interested is really helping them refine and distill down and make a compelling investor deck presentation. So a lot of the work happens in these counseling sessions, and that's where it can take anywhere from several weeks, maybe it's 8 or 10 weeks, continually counseling, and it's usually once a week for maybe an hour to 90 minutes, where both myself and some of my Launchpad advisors, we counsel the company to give them constructive insight and make sure they're hitting all the critical components an investor really wants to hear in their investor deck presentation. Not just talking about the technology, talking about more about the problem, their solution, the competition, the market size, their IP, the financial model, who's on the team, kind of all of that in a nice package formula that kind of tells a sequential story that flows nicely and keeps an audience engaged. So we take about, as you saw last year, we took about 58 to panel. And I'll describe our panel process. This is really kind of the cornerstone within our program, what makes it so unique, is also our statistical evaluation report that we produce after the panel. And once a company kind of graduates through our program, we do our best to highlight them to the network, whether it's through a conference or even to our capital network. So basically what we're trying to do is help an entrepreneur distill down, make a compelling investor deck presentation through our peer review process. Again, it takes about 12 to 16 weeks to go through, maybe once a week for an hour to 90 minutes. We're doing them all virtually now. And then we take them to that panel. And this is the most unique process for a company to get this approach. It's kind of like Shark Tank, if you will, in terms of getting that visual. With the entrepreneur, we give them the opportunity to present 20 minutes uninterrupted to a group of about 10 or 15 subject matter experts related to that entrepreneur's industry space. So if it's an medical technology company, maybe in cardiology, we'll get 10 or 15 cardiologist related industry experts on that panel. If it's an ophthalmology company, we'll get the ophthalmology folks. And all of these individuals, they come, they donate their time, one, to see innovation that's happening in our ecosystem, but is also to kind of get to network with one another. And these panelists, as we call them, our subject matter experts, have a variance of backgrounds within that industry. Maybe they're technical, maybe they have, finance, maybe they're an investor, maybe they're an entrepreneur that's been in that space, maybe they're sales and marketing. But it brings a unique opportunity for the entrepreneur to get real insight from the industry, to hear all their different thoughts on ways to not only improve their business strategy, but get connected into those markets. And that's really what we're trying to do, is expose the entrepreneur through this opportunity presenting to the panel. One, to get the feedback from the panel group. So the company will present 20 minutes uninterrupted. They'll get about 45 minutes to an hour of feedback and Q&A with the group. And we'll ask all of our panelists to fill out an evaluation form, which produces our statistical report, which I have in this slide, and I'll show you how we do that. But again, this is a real first opportunity for the entrepreneur to get exposure to the group, to build further relationships and get constructive insight from the industry. So our evaluation form, which I want to jump into now, this is where during that panel, as I just described, those 10 or 15 subject matter experts will fill out an evaluation form. It's got 30 criteria questions on it based on the market opportunity, the technical solution, the business model, the management team, and the overall investment opportunity. And this is a 10-year-old database with all 600 of those companies split into either high technology or medical technology. And we've refined and tied into those categories, and it produces our analytics. And this is a slide here showing this certain company, how well they did to our historical database in the medical technology space. They scored in the 90th percentile in the market opportunity, 80th percentile in the technical solution. Management team, almost 80. Business plan was their worst score in the 60th percentile. Investment opportunity, about an 80. And we'll dive back down with the entrepreneur into all of this to help them further refine their overall strategy. And it'll show their strengths and weaknesses to our historical database of both funded and non-funded companies through our program. This slide shows how they did just to the funded companies. So the scores do tend to drop. As you can see, going back to the first one, this is it compared to all funding. So market opportunity scored in the 93. The next slide, they scored in the 88. Still a strong score, but a slight drop. And then within each of these 5 buckets here, we then have a list of questions laid within them. So the market opportunity, how they got in the 80th percentile to all funded. This slide shows how well they did. In the right-hand side is a direct reflection of that on the left. So this score, if you can see my cursor, how well the entrepreneur described their value proposition. The company scored a 3.2, where the average funded company scored a 3.0. And due to a rounding error, just slightly rounded up to 0.3 above the average funded company. Same thing with how well the entrepreneur addressed the market size. They scored a 3.5, average funded scored a 3.2, and then problem immediacy of market demand, this company scored 3.8. A 4 is a perfect score. And the average funded scored a 2.9. So this just shows that they're very strong in the market opportunity. This slide shows they're very strong in the investment opportunity. Technical solution, I'm showing a rock star of a company, but just to give you the idea of how we kind of use our data and analytics to help this entrepreneur even find out what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, But overall, this is a very strong company. And this company did go on to receive funding, and I believe has about 45 employees as of today. So and there's a different way we show the data, but it's a very helpful tool, not only for the entrepreneur, but also to investors, to see, hey, what are their areas of strength? What are their areas of weakness? How can, gives them kind of the investor a little insight on the overall business of that entrepreneur. This last slide is just a nice visual to show this company scored Dynamics. This dark blue circle is their score. The larger blue square is the funded mean, the gray diamond, the non-funded mean, taking all 30 of the criteria, cutting it in half in terms of how large of an opportunity it is on the left, and how far along they are in terms of progress on the bottom. And then this last slide shows all of their strengths and weaknesses on one slide. As you can see on the right, there's the areas of weakness. So customer acquisition costs is going to be a struggle. Their financials need some further work. Use of funds, executive summary they can bolster. So as you can see, it's just a good tool using both for the entrepreneur as well as a potential investor to analyze this company even deeper compared to our historical database. So success stories, as I mentioned, that's really how we get our support. Is our companies that we take through, we want to see them grow, succeed, create an impact. And the innovation ecosystem here in Orange County and Southern California is very, very strong. Again, companies you may recognize, Recros Medica graduated through our program about 2 years ago. They went on to raise $20 million. They're currently about 10, maybe even 15 employees by now. Neural Analytics went on to raise almost $70 million after they completed our program in 2016. They've gone on to raise 100 new employees. LensGen, an ophthalmology company, raised an additional 30 after going through us, and now has about 24 employees. So those are the metrics that help us support back to our different sponsors in the ecosystem, as well as our grant supporters. So we're really fortunate to have such great companies that come, and we work a lot with companies from the UK. And Linda, who I'll turn it over in 2 minutes, she went through our program, and she was based in the UK, and she presented at our medical technology conference. Seeing here, this is one of our large conferences that we produce every year. We had 7 companies get up on stage and present their 10-minute investor deck presentation to the entire audience. And we work with companies that are raising, their first million, maybe their late seed round, to companies that are even looking for their Series B at 30 million. What we want to do is highlight the companies in the different stages and the different industries to our audience to showcase the innovation that's happening in the medical technology landscape here in Orange County, as well as companies internationally that are looking to move to Orange County or build a bridge here, set up some sort of go-to-market strategy here in the US. And Orange County is a great hub for that, especially because in the medical technology space, Southern California has a lot of the key strategics, whether it's Allergan or Medtronic or different companies in the landscape that are all residing here, whether headquarters or global headquarters are placed here. So using Octane and our LaunchPad program, we're able to help these entrepreneurs get connected, get them exposed to the right network, and hopefully help them grow and scale and make a significant impact, not only here, in Southern California, but internationally. So we're really fortunate with all of the companies that we've worked with. And again, what we try and do at the end of the day is expose our companies best we can to venture capital, whether it's a family office, a high net worth individual, a large venture fund, private equity group. Some of these listed on the screen are just some of our close connections that we constantly share deal flow to, or they participate in one of our conferences. But we're really very blessed to have a lot of these key relationships in place to get further exposure of our companies coming through our program. And again, it's all even strategic venture capital. A lot of these organizations that are listed here are on the Octane board, whether it's the CEO or a high senior vice president role. We're able to get relevant contacts to get these companies well plugged into the network best we can. So I know I took up probably a little too much time there, but I hope you enjoyed that. And I'm curious to hear how any of the companies on the call today, individuals, might be interested in using our program. Just to remind you, there's no cost to go through our program. We do not charge a fee or take equity. Your success is our success. The only thing we ask for is for data. So as you go through our program, you grow, you scale, raise capital, create new jobs. Those are the metrics we'd love to highlight and expose to our network. Or even, maybe our program's not the best for LaunchPad, but just getting you plugged into the Octane network at a conference, one of our events, or maybe even if you need some strategic help, we're happy to provide that best we can. And that's really the beauty of the relationships we built with the Irvine Chamber to strengthen those bridges and relationships internationally. So I'm going to turn it over to Linda, who's going to give you her insight on how her experience was working with me and presenting at our medical technology conference just this last, October
Yeah.
2019.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you, JC. I'm going to share my screen. Let me just see. The sunlight's a bit on. Okay, there we go. Let me make sure that's working. Can JC Pepper, can you see that?
I can. Perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. And then the other thing I need to do is 1 second, everybody. I'm going to stop my video just whilst I present so that we don't have any problems with the connection. As you know, I'm presenting all the way from London, and I'm at home for obvious reasons, so let's not test the airwaves too much. Right, let's put that on. Full screen? Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Or should I say good morning? Sorry, where you are, it's good morning. My name's Linda Pomeroy. I run a company called Cambridge Orthopaedic Labs. Very briefly, it's an orthopedic company with a platform technology. Essentially, if you broke your wrist, you would have it either treated in a plasticast, an external fixator where they drill the pins into the bone, or an open operation for a plate. Our device does the job of the X-Fix and the plate, but non-invasively. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about my company. I'm actually here to talk to you about the Octane LaunchPad program that we went through. We applied and took part in it last year, and I'm going to talk you through my experience of it and what we were able to achieve from being part of it. So I'm going to take you back to the beginning and how I kind of got involved in it. And very much, I think it's key to highlight that there was this really strong interplay for us between the Greater Irvine Chamber and Octane. So if I take you back to when actually we kind of got involved, it was Q1 19, and I was working at AstraZeneca at the time, running my business alongside that. AstraZeneca are supporters of like a pharma biotech network over here in the UK called One Nucleus, and I saw through that they organise a lot of various events, sort of conferences, keynote speakers, all that kind of thing for industry to go to. And I saw a visit from Greater Irvine Chamber, and I got involved in terms of presenting to the delegation that came across over here in London. And part of the delegation was a member from Octane, and we kind of kept in touch afterwards because we had an interesting experience of me presenting early one morning and then there being a fire alarm, and then I had to finish the presentation in the middle of a London street. So I think I kind of stayed in their mind afterwards, and I managed to kind of persuade them that actually we would be a good fit for both the Greater Irvine Chamber program for life science companies from the UK, and in terms of coming over and looking at what Southern California can offer for our expansion plans, but also to look at Octane and get involved in the LaunchPad program and what that could offer. So as I said, we got involved in the Octane LaunchPad program. This process, you can see clearly, I've stolen the slide from JC. For me, this process was in 3 parts. So the first part, the sort of the meeting, the preparing the presentation. The second part being around the LaunchPad panel and the evaluation by the industry experts. And then the final part, the finalization of the presentation. And here JC calls it capital ready, but for me and my company, it was very much around the conference that that we came over to attend at the end of October last year. And that was critical, a critical part of the process. The first part The application, I'll be honest, I don't fully remember the application. I know I did it. That's pretty much all I can tell you about that. But as we go through, you'll see that it was definitely worthwhile in doing it. So for the first part, the pre-industry expert panel. So essentially, I had a number of meetings with JC and his team. We would go through the presentation. I'd always get a lot of feedback, and I've just taken a very small section of one of my very early notes that I got back. And trust me, that's a small amount of information I've taken there. I got reams of very good feedback, but a lot to work with. And it's a very much a supported iterative process. So, you know, as JC said, you know, you meet every, I forget exactly what it was, but every couple of weeks. And you're probably all sitting there thinking, why is this crazy Brit talking about the London weather on this slide? But it will become clear in a second. So the feedback I had was that basically my slides looked dull and dreary like the London weather. And so I worked through the slides. I can see JC holding his head in his hands. I worked through the slides, and hopefully you'll agree in a minute that they looked brighter and better as we went through. Importantly, they kind of really teased out the sort of story hook, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. And also focusing on, you know, I thought everything was in the slide deck, but they were very good at pulling out, actually, you haven't really got enough around commercialization milestones, or the financials needed some work either in how they were presented or in terms of the substance behind them. So this is the London grey foggy sky, apparently, and as I hope you can sort of see as I flick through, I've only just pulled the first 2 or 3. They're very grey, a little bit bland. I felt, you know, very good, but apparently not. And so then I had my second attempt at the second meeting, where I was sticking to my London roots, but I tried to brighten it slightly, but they didn't agree. They said it just looked like the fog was lifting slightly. So then I spent a proper amount of time and really revamped it. So I really kind of drew on my Cambridge. So I set up the company whilst I was studying at Cambridge in the UK. So we drew on the colour of Cambridge from here. We made them much brighter. These are the kind of equivalent slides from the previous grey dull ones. And you can see how they're much brighter. They pop out. There's some useful information in them. Hopefully this kind of really gives you some good key takeaways. And that was the other aspect that I certainly gained from it, was, you know, really deliver what takeaway are you trying to get from each slide. And that going through the process was really very useful from that. And then this point about the story and the hook that had. So we have a slightly unusual story in terms of how the business sort of got started. Myself and Ali were both studying at Cambridge in the UK. I was racing to the North Pole. I was looking for something to go into my kit. And, you know, there was nothing out there. Ali's an orthopedic surgeon, and he had an idea as to what we could develop. So there was sort of a need, and he had the solution. And so this hook, this story that I kind of wove in at the beginning on the basis of the feedback that I was getting, I think was very useful for a number of reasons. Firstly, people kind of started listening to me, I think, at the start of the presentation. But interestingly, afterwards, I got a lot of kind of contact and follow-ups based on, you know, oh, you're the orthopedic girl that went to the North Pole. And so these like small things that I think, you know, we certainly improved in our presentation through the program, I think made quite a big difference to us coming out the other side. And then so we moved into the second part of the program, so the evaluation with the industry experts, done by webinar. I know JC saying it's all been done like that now, but of course we are talking 12 months ago when we were less virtual. And so I was done by webinar because of course I was over in London. Great panel, really insightful, both questions and feedback. I've been through these kind of things sometimes before, and you know, you don't quite get the right experts in the room, and I didn't feel like at all with Octane. I felt they had a really good cross section of experts that were very relevant to our particular industry and business case. And then of course the company report that JC went through, we obviously received that as well. And then to the final part of the process, as I saw it. So we finalized the presentation, and we went to, we were like one of the LaunchPad finalists that we were able to present at the conference. So we're at this MedTech Innovation conference last year, and we were one of the 7 companies that were able to present. And so this is just a collection of pictures from the conference, but I think it's worth highlighting the benefit of this conference. The conference, one, of course, was very well organized, but also as one of the presenting companies, we had a stand. The conference had a lot of keynote speakers, seminar sessions, discussions, but also was really well peppered with breaks, the ability to network. People would come by our stand and have conversations with us. It was a really good balance of learning, being able to get our message across and interact with people. And of course, the highlight was towards the end of the conference when we were able to deliver our presentation. Off the back of the conference, we obviously gained a lot from that in terms of, and you see on the right-hand side of the slide here, from the presentation, very much we had wide exposure, discussions with investors, advisors, just general networking. We did receive some investment off the back of it, and whilst I can't go into a lot of detail, there are definitely still some discussions ongoing. It really opened up the possibility to us about moving the business, or certainly creating a US-based business arm, whether you moved out completely or you created the US subsidiary. So it really crystallized that possibility for us. And of course, there was lots of connection and follow-up. And on the left-hand side, you know, the actual process itself, then of course, as the presentations I've kind of gone through was improved, refined, etc. And because I presented it so often, my delivery of it, I hope, improved anyway. But also, I think what's important to point out is that when you're doing all this iteration, and it allows you time to think, to reframe and get feedback on it, it actually also underpins the kind of the foundations of what you're talking about. So I also think, whilst we didn't sit and work specifically on a business plan, I felt very much that our business plan was improved from it, because the foundations, we were able to revisit and build up the foundations properly to be able to deliver a proper defined, well-executed presentation by the end of it. And so from a UK perspective, of course, I thought this positive interplay between Greater Irvine Chain and Octane worked exceptionally well for us. Because we came out, we went through the process with Octane, which was excellent for all the reasons I've already described, but also coming out as part of the Greater Irvine Chamber, we also were able to meet with a wider set of people. We made a lot of contacts. I got some advice, for example, on immigration. You know, if I was going to set up something in Southern California, what did I need to do to be able to spend 6 months, 12 months out in the US? You know, this type of ad hoc advice is valuable when you're a small startup company, and as we all know, cash is often hard to come by. So we also had, you know, we looked at office and lab space. We were introduced to a lot of the local hospitals and other industry contacts. Clearly funding, great. And we were looking for funding, and that is still ongoing, but I would like to say, I hope, she says, looking positive. And I think my final point is that it kind of built this awareness, both the awareness for us as a small company, you know, a medical device market, clearly the US is a key market and you need to go there and understand it. But it allowed us to work out, actually, how can we do this? How could we put a presence in the US? And also awareness the other way around. You know, people now know about our business. I still get follow-up, or, you know, an intro via an intro. And again, for a small business, when you're trying to kind of raise your head above the water so that people notice you, this is all exceptionally valuable stuff. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm very happy to take any questions, and I'll stop sharing and turn it back to Pepper.
Hello, everyone. I do not see that we have any questions from our participants. So I'd like to thank JC and Linda for this very informative session. I'm sure you've addressed quite a few concerns of our companies and what they've thought about while considering their expansion to the US. For any remaining questions, or to seek your further guidance in addressing any specific issues, I'd like to invite everyone to reach out to you directly, and we'll be supplying that contact information to them after this webinar. To our viewers, if you're ready to take your next steps to expand to Irvine, In Southern California, please reach out to Linda DeMario, the Executive Vice President of the Greater Irvine Chamber. We're here as a resource and ally for you in your expansion process, and we can connect you with the experts, partners, and resources you need. So don't hesitate to send us a quick email.